To crumble and to the floor the spears will fall. I've been made and sealed with love, but time to battle, I'll fight them all. I felt the whips and remember chains, but my sword has been forged by my father's flames. Fight your fears and heal your pain, and victory will be in your name.
I used to be weak, but I'm not weak no more. I found the strength of my ancestors deep down in my African core. I used to be frightened, I'm not afraid no more. The Father blessed me with the heart of a lion and a warrior soul. So no weapon that form against I shall not prevail, and no man that rise against I, that war they shall never win. 'Cause I will conquer, oh I will conquer, yes I will conquer them. Come on, let's conquer, oh I will conquer, rise up and conquer them. Tell them no retreat, no surrender. I shall fight till the end of days. I was born as a Makai warrior, and Almighty God my place. Fire burn all Satan carrier, Father loose all shackles and chain. This morning first thing as I wake up, King David told Sam to the brain. Don't let your courage go down, keep it up. And if your heart rip up and stitch it up, don't let your faith them fall, pick it up. When my cup was empty, God fill it up. Don't take the devil contract, rip it up. And if your bad mind people to commit it up, pass me the Congo drum and let me beat it up. God on my side, me don't give it up. No weapon that form against I shall not prevail. And no man that rise against us, first thing I just war they shall never win. 'Cause I will conquer, oh I will conquer, yes I will conquer them. Come on, let's conquer, oh I will conquer, rise up and conquer them.
Thank you, Father. I want to say thank you, Lord. You're everything, Father. Thank you.
Father, you alone shall guide me. No man shall lead my path. In the wind I hear your quiet whispers, and you heal my broken heart. Even some of my friends turn enemies, and they pray for right to feel. And remember you gave us your only begotten son, but we gave him the wound of life. Send down your warriors with the hello, they carry down to the end of days. No matter how the devil try trick me, unto you my soul I will give. Father, I know this storm is coming, I can see the high tide raise. Without you there is no other. Could there be that will decisive?
No weapon that form against I shall not prevail. And no man that rise against I, that war they shall never win. 'Cause I will conquer, oh I will conquer, yes I will conquer them. Come on, let's conquer, oh I will conquer, rise up and conquer them.
I am a man, I am a champion, I am a warrior. So who are you to tell me that I cannot make? Who are you to tell me that I am not the greatest thing that God ever created?
Good morning, Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique. You're listening to Hard Talk Grenada. A very special good morning to those of you joining us on 97.5 City Sound FM, 89.5 CRFM, 92.9 Sister Isle Radio broadcasting from Hillsborough, Carriacou, and of course 94.9 We Noise Radio out there in Brooklyn, New York. A very special good morning to those of you joining us on the live feed, whether it's on WhatsApp, on YouTube, on Facebook, wherever you may be. A very special good morning to you. It is a beautiful sunny morning here in the Spice Isle of Grenada. I don't know if the sun is shining as bright in Carriacou, but I'm sure that it is, and I'm sure somebody will let me know. All right, but we do have a very packed program for you this morning. This morning, I'm going to have with me in studio in just a bit Miss Oslyn Crosby from NADMA. And we're going to be talking about the hurricane season. We'll be talking about the recent reports that Kikem-Jenny is now at an alert yellow. So there's a lot for us to talk about, being prepared for the hurricane season. I know everybody is consumed with talks of COVID and how we are going to adjust and make things the new normal, but we cannot forget that we are now in the hurricane season. We are also now in what we call our rainy season as well, and you have to know what you're putting in place for your family in the event that we get a hurricane or a storm or whatever natural disaster decides to come our way. We have to take that into consideration. We have to consider it. This morning, I want to share with you very quickly, because I'm going to open the lines for just a bit. And the number to call is 440-7377. And if you're in the diaspora and you want to give us a call, it's 347-329-3101. And remember, we can take WhatsApp calls and also WhatsApp messages, so share with us via that means as well. I want to share with you an experience I had this morning coming to work. I was on a bus headed to St. George, and there are a few teachable moments coming out of that experience that I want to share with you, but I also want your opinion on it as well. First, the experience of the driver being charged. We were coming over Queen's Park by Keep Left, heading into town, and there were police officers stationed there on active duty. I guess they were checking for persons wearing their masks and so on. And the driver was not wearing his mask. His mask, I believe, was in his pocket. And the police decided that he would charge it. Now, remember, for those of you who do not know, that the charge for not wearing your mask while driving is $500. Some would argue that it's a hefty sum, while others would argue that it's the adequate price for safety, right? But the driver was upset simply because he believed that it was the duty of the officer to give him a warning and not charge him on spot for driving a passenger vehicle with passengers on board and not wearing his mask. What do you guys think? Let's know in the comments. Let's know in the calls. But we do have Miss Crosby. Good morning, Oslyn. In studio with us right on time. So we're going to get right into it because I know it's a hurricane season. She's a very busy woman. So we're going to take a short break, and then we will be back with Miss Crosby to talk all things NADMA, hurricane season, volcano. You have it. We'll talk about it. We'll be right back.
Destruction of the poor is poverty, Lord. Destruction of our soul is colonial. Oh, how I wonder if you will. What did I say? I wanna rule my. What did I say?
All right, guys, and we are back. And in studio with me this morning, I have none other, and she's no stranger to the studio. She's a regular. She's like family. We have none other than Miss Oslin Crosby. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning to your listeners. Miss Duncan, of course, I know those in the diaspora on the local radio stations. Good morning, and thank you so much for having me.
All right. Now, we have a lot to talk about, Oslin. As you know, we are in the hurricane season. We are still at the heels of COVID. And now Kikem Jenny. So we have lots to talk about this morning, but I want us to start with COVID and the efforts that NADMA had incorporated along with the COVID committee to deal with, and I must say congratulations, because you guys did a wonderful job in dealing with COVID and the effects of COVID. And so I just want you to take this opportunity to share with the general public what measures or how was NADMA involved in the whole operation to deal with COVID-19.
Well, of course, you know that we are a coordinating unit. So what we were doing up at the EOC is that we had a team of the inclusive of police, representative from police, NADMA, also from the different ports of entry, so customs, also port authority, airport authority. And we were dealing specifically with the quarantine of people who were either COVID positive. Of course, now what we're doing, what we're most active in now as relates to the COVID response is that of ensuring that our cruise liners and our repatriated nationals returning home ensure that they're in mandatory quarantine, they're comfortable, they're, of course, testing and so is facilitated, that we facilitate them.
Okay, and we had a large number, I think it was
113 came in yesterday.
Yesterday, that's a large number, with more expected.
It's the biggest. I don't think we don't have that big a team to come again. We still have some to come though, but not that big a team. That is the biggest team.
Okay, so you guys were involved in the whole quarantine efforts.
We are involved.
Oh, still involved.
Yes, we are involved.
In the whole quarantine efforts, ensuring that people follow the guidelines that they're supposed to, and
ensuring, because remember they cannot move, so it also involves having to drop off their groceries, so they get to send their grocery list. You pick it up, and of course you put it at the doorway. If they have any concerns, any issues, you ensure, so you're their liaison, ensuring that they are comfortable, because remember, being in isolation is not an easy. Being in quarantine, it's not easy. Yeah. You're home, but still you're not home, and it's not the same feeling. Yes. So, of course, you have to ensure that you make them as comfortable as possible. And, of course, we know that all we have now is just one positive case, active case. With that, just knowing that you have a virus that is crippling the world is depressing as it is. And if you can ensure that whatever contribution you make, that it assists that person in bridging that absence of everything else that's normal, then we know that it will make a difference and it will complete the healing process.
Absolutely. Now, they would make up a number that is inclusive of, or they would add to the amount that came in from the UK as well. So you guys currently would have about... we're looking at 140, 150.
A number I would not attempt to give you, because, once you start talking numbers and somebody want to know, okay, so it means, therefore, that the people who are in quarantine, that after 14 days, everybody would have left. We know that is not how the system functions. Because even though we say 14 days quarantine, remember, you're being tested throughout your quarantine time.
Right.
And that before you get to reintegrate into society, you're also tested to ensure that whatever status you came in with, that you're going out the same way.
Right.
Because if you do have the virus, there is no way that our Ministry of Health will send you out to reintegrate into society to create a problem that we have been doing so well at containing.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying let's stay away from the numbers, because we're going to start doing math and deductions, and so is that happening? And then we would have to start explaining, and we know that that part of things are very sensitive, and we leave it. We try to keep it there. What we do know is that there are people in quarantine
There are people.
Yes, there are people in quarantine.
Now, I know that the efforts are ongoing because we also have to take into consideration that the borders might, and I say might because we're still looking at what is happening regionally and also internationally before we make an affirmative decision on if the borders open on the 30th or not. Although the date has been given, nothing is really set in stone. But I assume that you guys are readying yourselves for that upsurge, if there is, in the amount of people that would be coming into the country.
As an individual and as a disaster manager working within the agency for disaster management, I think that is when everything, all plans, and the Ministry of Health will be preparing, NADMA being a part of the response team. We would also be preparing, because Duncan, this will be the real test of our COVID-19 preparedness.
It would.
And I often say it in my circle, and I would share now. I think there is a certain level of complacency among our people because we think that this has passed. But we have to understand that we are still, and the freedom that we are experiencing now will soon be curtailed whenever our main ports of entries are open.
You're absolutely correct. And
Because this is a controlled environment. The ports are closed. All the people coming in now are going directly into mandatory government quarantine. When we open up our ports and our business people, because of course we know that government will be sharing the regulations that relates to how business people will be treated. Somebody coming in for 2 days for a conference or for a business meeting. We know that the 14 days quarantine may not apply to them.
right.
Jamaica would have instituted a number of regulations, that same thing. So business
Right.
people, you come in, you will be tested. If you are tested positive, then you may be repatriated. You may be sent back to your place, or you go into quarantine at your cost. These are some of the regulations Jamaica have instituted. What will happen here? We await our government and Ministry of Health, of course, guided by the experts in the Ministry of Health, as to what would be the best formula to ensuring that we continue to do what we can to contain this virus. Our true test will start, or it whenever our ports of entries. So let us enjoy that time that we have now, where we feel comfortable, because we know that nobody around us, there have been no imported cases, and of
Right.
course we are still controlling what's happening. Wait till the many Grenadians abroad that would have booked their flights, and we know that everybody wants to get out of the big countries now and come home to go to the beach and get some freedom.
Yeah.
When that happens, Duncan, it's going to be interesting. And it is a time that we would have to be on high alert, our children, our elderly, our most vulnerable groups, because that is when masks, and so we would have to wear them. We have to ensure that we stick to the protocols. So what's happening now is our practice session. This is our exercise. And we need to take the exercise serious. It's like when we do our exercises annually, when we're testing the plans,
Yeah.
we are testing the plans. All the cases that we have had, the 23 cases that we have had in Grenada, were all imported or import related. And that's interesting. What will happen when our borders are open is what I would encourage. And as NADMA, we want to encourage people, please take the protocol seriously. Practice.
Now, a lot of people would argue that if this is the case, then why don't we just leave our borders closed?
It is not realistic. Is it?
Well, of course not.
It's not realistic.
Of course not.
If the world stayed locked down, Duncan, I think we would, and you don't have to be an economist to figure that part out.
Yep.
If the world remains in lockdown, what happens to the economies of the world?
Yep.
What happens to our economy? That's a small economy.
Absolutely.
The bigger economies are suffering. The move, the move to reopen, it is not because you're just tired of staying locked down, There's a reason why every country have an economic machinery.
Yeah.
Whenever the engine is down, We see what happened. Look at the price of oil. Look at the effects on the world market. Stocks, the stock market fell. Think about the amount of people that are at home that displaced from their jobs because of Corona. The past 2020 is quite a year, a historic year.
You know, somebody was saying, and I've seen it a couple places on social media, that 2020 has been a year that you can say it's like a game of Jumanji. Every month a different thing. It's like a roll of a dice. You're waiting to see what will happen. You know, but it is unrealistic. It's not a good fit if we decide that we're going to keep our borders closed much longer.
We cannot do it.
Yeah,
we cannot do it.
We've been managing so far because our economy has grown over the past few years, and we've been able to sustain ourselves for the past few months. I'm not sure that we may be able to do it for much longer.
That's it. The growth of the economy would only sustain the country in lockdown for a particular period.
Yeah.
You must start back the engine in order for you to have that continued growth. It may not be what was projected at the start of the year, but you're still hoping, because remember, you have to sustain this country. Who sustains it? Is the business. The economic activity is dependent on not just, look at it, the public service is not fully back to work as yet.
Yeah.
We're still coming back in. In our case, we have to be in. We have been in. Well, we've always been working. Whether you're in or out, you're always working.
Yeah.
But you have to come out. You must come out. And when we were in that lockdown period, I wondered, what was my hairdresser doing? How was she able to pay her bills? My fitness instructor. You know, the people run small businesses. My partner who runs a small business, and it's like, okay, so what happens now with rent? You were not in the building. There were no operations for at least 2 months. What happens? How will it be treated? And, it just have your mind, you just boxing around many questions.
You know, there are a lot of people who believe and that in most cases, when your bread is butter, you don't think about the butter of anybody else's bread.
That's not
because
true.
When I was in I can't say quarantine because I wasn't in quarantine. I had to work every day.
Every single day we're outside.
But my mind was constantly on the less fortunate and constantly on the different business owners and entrepreneurs and how they're making it and I made it my duty when I spoke to Ms. Chanel Andrew from finance regarding the stimulus package to ensure that I asked about all of the people whose business was on my mind. The lunch lady at school, the little vendors.
The little vendors that come out, and that is how they're able to feed their families. You're looking at, let's just use Tantine down there, for example. I would normally go into the court one of the mornings when I'm rushing to pick up breakfast. Very well. And they're not there now. And we know that these are single mothers, families to feed. When 2 months, we're going on 3 months, that this it's going, because we're still trying to settle back down to what is considered our new normal. So we keep the country locked down. What will happen to us?
Absolutely.
It is not realistic.
It's not.
It is. What we have to do is, and as the WHO has been saying, we need to learn to live with the virus.
Yeah.
We have to. It's like HIV. When it started, we were all frightened. But we have figured out now people living long, healthy lives with the virus. So now we have to learn. So every day it's another day that you learn something new about the virus.
Yes.
How to keep safe is what you need to keep focus on and practice it as best as we possibly can.
Now, there has been some complaints, Ozelin, about people... and I don't want to single out any particular group because it's been complaints over a period of time. People going to the beach, gathering in clusters and not being able or not wearing or following the protocols of wearing the mask or the social distancing and so on. And that is out in the general public. What tools does NADMA have in place to deal with these or are you a part of that, or is it just the Royal Grenada Police Force for the enforcing of that?
But what in that case, what we would do is more assist health as it relates to the dissemination of information
Right.
on the protocols that you have to follow. As we always say, it's an old adage: you can take the horse to the well, you cannot make them drink. Yes, and we always remind you. There's something I always speak to as it relates to safety and disaster management. The safety of an individual is an individual's
It's
responsibility.
an individual, and that's very true. It's very true. It's just as the driver this morning. I'm sure you heard when you came in. I was coming down to work, and there was a driver without his mask, and he was upset at the charge, saying that the police should have given in a warning. But do you really need a warning when we've spent so much months, telling you that this is what needs to be done for your own safety, and of course for the safety of the people that you transport?
See, and that is where that is where responsibility comes in. I make a statement all the time that there's a reason why adults are given license to move vehicles, and that you have to be at a certain age before one will be issued to you.
Right.
It is because at that time, reasoning, responsibility, logic, all those you have to employ. Or at that stage, you should know enough, and of course learning as you get older.
Right.
We are in the period of a pandemic. It has not ended. You are a driver of a passenger bus. We're not talking here your private vehicle
Right.
where you have your family. You're talking passengers, other people.
But you
I
don't
think
have
it
to tell
explains
me.
it well. I think that part explains it
Yeah,
all.
and I think that yesterday.
There are no exceptions. You see, in that case, it's like, okay. I know sometimes our bus operators always tend to think that we come down on them as the public, we target them. But remember the kind of responsibility that you're carrying.
It's
It
a
is
big
not just you, it's a
responsibility.
huge one.
Yeah.
It's like being a parent. When you're a parent, anything goes wrong with your child, parent is responsible.
Yep.
Whether or not you may be, children do things, but you're still responsible.
Yeah.
And it's a similar position. Drivers of passenger buses are in. So my life is in your hands. So I expect you
Yeah.
to be the driver of change and safety as the captain of your vessel. You're the one that's driving the bus. This is yours.
Yeah.
So it starts with you. Have you ever wondered why there's a difference between a driver and a conductor? The driver is the one moving this vehicle. I am a part of it.
Yeah.
So my life is in your hands. So it starts and ends with you.
Absolutely. Now, also, I want us to move to the hurricane season that we are now in. And one of the biggest questions would be, in the event of a natural disaster, a hurricane, earthquake, whatever, especially now that we are dealing with COVID, have adjustments been made to our disaster plans to incorporate mass gatherings in the event that there needs to be gatherings at a shelter or something like that?
Revision. Well, no, you don't have a choice but to revise and review all your plans. Because remember, even though we're in the hurricane season, we continue to practice comprehensive disaster management, where we have to be prepared for all hazards that have the potential of affecting us at any time. So yes, have to be reviewed. But with that comes challenges. Many challenges.
Of course.
Because on a normal day, you may say that you can accommodate 50 people at a shelter, depending on the size of the shelter. We're talking families, we're talking single parents, we're talking children, the elderly, everybody. Now, with the protocols in place, social distancing, all that goes with it, the use of masks, ensuring that we don't spread the cluster cases that can happen. If we were to be affected by a hurricane, God forbid, this 2020, with all that's happening,
Yes.
it will present very, very unique challenges for us. This year is no normal year for disaster management.
Right.
It is like the ultimate test of everything that you were taught. No, you're getting to test it.
Right.
And I remember on my program last year in the US, we were told more than once that a plan is one thing, you can put together a plan,
Right.
but you can only determine the strength of your plan when it's tested against your worst situation. This is one of the worst that you can find.
That's correct.
2020 has given us a scenario. It's a real life exercise on what your worst case scenario can be as it relates to having to deal with many hazards one time. And we know for sure that while COVID has been able to postpone many things, events, and you get to reschedule or you get to do another year, there is no way you can touch nature and hurricane season.
It's true.
We could not push that one back. We have to accommodate it. We have to live with it. And of course, if we are to be affected, we can't stop it either. And the challenges, if we would have heard from Met earlier on in the year, our sea water is very, very warm. And that has been going into the hurricane season for the past couple of months, the earlier months in the year, extremely warm.
And for those of you who don't know, warm waters are the ripest
It is fuel for systems.
for a hurricane
For
or a storm.
cyclones.
Right.
It is fuel for them. We're not saying that it means that we may get more, The predictions for the season is a prediction for the season. But what it may mean is that, of course, with the fuel, as everything else, if you light a fire and you pour gas in it, we know what would happen, right?
Yeah.
It will blaze. We saw what, who was it last year? Which one of the systems it was? The one up in the US that stayed over one place for
Over the Bahamas.
days. Over that Florida area, the Florida Keys, and it sucked out all the heat from the water.
Yeah.
It did not move. Can you imagine this warm water that we have in the Caribbean now? What will happen? But let's not think about that too much. The information that we share is not to instill fear, but it's more to inform you,
Yes, of
so that
course.
it reminds you of the need to always be prepared. And as we have been reminding you at this point, it is more so important now to have that discussion with your family as to what we should be doing. Because remember, as we said, COVID has and is creating a very unique situation for us to have to deal with. If you have to go to a shelter, let's say you think that your structure, your home is compromised, and you know that you may just need to move before. You need to know where your shelters are. You need to know how you would be able to control if you have children, with the social distancing protocol, with the corona still in the air. How do we do it? How do we do it? And you may not go to a shelter, but you may be in distress in the middle of the system, and you have to run out. You run to the neighbor's home. Remember, the threats, as the Minister of Health has always said, the threats are right around us. Huh?
Right.
We don't know who have the virus and who don't, because we have asymptomatic carriers around.
Right.
What do we do? What do we do? Think about it. Put your mind to work and just think about it.
So are we looking at maybe the introduction of additional shelters to deal with an event of more people having to use shelters now? Well, not even more, because even though we have the same amount,
You
with
may have to spread. You would have capacity, of course,
Right.
would decrease, because you need to then also think about the social
the
distancing
social distancing.
protocols that would have to be applied. So it means that capacity numbers would decrease.
Right.
So the possibility of more shelters, very, very likely. We await the final list. I know inspection was completed. Now the list report been worked on. The list must go to cabinet and then published to the public. So until such time, last year's approved list of shelters remain the
Okay.
approved list until the new list is published.
Okay. Now I want us to touch the to stay around the hurricane season for a moment. With so much activity, there's been a lot of activity thus far. A lot of waves and so on. How or when, I should ask, will NADMA start releasing information, and do you guys or are you guys in the business of helping people put together emergency plans for their homes? I mean, I may be able to, or I may have the capacity to say, okay, well, I'm going to sit down and put together a plan for my home, but there are some people who are not they're not heads or tails and know what to do. Are you guys in the business of helping people put together plans or putting model plans out there that people can use to tweak to suit their situations?
We have already started actually disseminating information because we were affected by our first tropical system last week, and then of course we had the issue with the Saharan dust on the weekend. But we continue to share information. But what we do is we encourage people to listen to your weather forecast daily. Yes, because it's the same people that guide us. Whenever we issue a bulletin, it is because there is a reason to be concerned. So we're going to tell you that you expect some rain. If you know you're living in low-lying areas, then you need to think of the area may flood, so you maybe need to pull out your sandbags. Think about it. So maybe you work in an area that's easy to flood, that you keep looking out, you keep checking to ensure that when it's time for you to leave, that you can leave.
Right.
So that's what we do. What we would do, and our Met would also inform us of those above average conditions, and we will disseminate information as relates to that.
There has been a question, and more so over the weekend, with the announcement of the Saharan dust, and also with the system that we had last week. Why is it that NADMA is giving the information and not the Met Office? There was that question.
The Met Office gave it, because we used it. We took the information from Met and send out a release. Met sends out information every day.
Right.
So you have 3 forecasts for the day: in the morning, midday, and the evening forecast. They would send out the outlook. So whenever the hurricane season start, they send out the tropical weather outlook that speaks to all systems, whether they have the potential to develop into anything major or not. So tropical depressions, tropical waves, everything would be inside of the outlook. So that is the same place that we would take the information from. So when I read through, daily I check in with Met. Outside of what they send, when I check my email and I read what is sent, then I see, okay, so it appears as though we have a wave that's coming, that's expected to give us some water in the next couple of days. I call. What should I expect? Tell me when I should disseminate information. They may guide me. Okay, Miss Crosby, hold on. Let me look at what the models show us by the end of the day, and maybe first thing tomorrow morning, that's the day before or so, or the morning, that we can say something, because we want to ensure that the information that is sent out, that it is close to what the actual conditions will be as possible. We know that it is never... with weather being so dynamic, sometimes it is not exactly what you say, but you're trying to be as close as possible.
Right.
And to assist with this, Met is working on some new products. So this year, what we would hear is that of impact forecasting. Okay. So not telling you just the wave is coming, but telling you exactly what will happen.
Right.
So I can tell you that rain is going to fall, the western side will slide. Be cautious on our drivers, be cautious on the roads on the west coast, because once the rain start falling, the west slide. The people in St. Andrew, we may say the Baltazar River, that is going to overflow. That kind of information. So it's going to be impact forecasting. You can relate to the information when you hear it. So you know, therefore, what you should and shouldn't do if you're in the area and those conditions start.
Now, a lot of people are of the impression that when NADMA gives information, it's more than likely not going to happen. What would you say? Because with that sort of mindset, we sometimes can become very complacent and put ourselves in danger. So what advice would you give on that?
It's interesting that you make that point, but I have a different interpretation of it. I don't think it is that when NADMA says something that it doesn't happen, Because for one, as I always explain to the people at the office, the fact that you can take it and make a meme out of it, right? Or that you can go about and say something, you can only say if you read.
Correct.
So the information reach you.
Right.
It is reaching.
That's good.
And that's the only way you can comment on it.
That's a very good way to look at it.
Yes, it is.
It is a very
Because
good
remember,
way to look at it.
the only way you can say did not happen, how would you say so if you did not read it?
If you didn't read it. That's very true. Now, I want us to start talking about Kikem Jenny because I don't want time to come up on us and we haven't touched it. Now, Kikem Jenny has been very active. Very, very active in the past couple of days. And from what I understand, it's been active since April, but it's intensified even more now.
Yes, I guess Corona. I guess maybe it's all in the air. I guess it's all in the air. We're laughing, but I guess it's all in the air. Kikem Jenny would have started from the information that we would have received from WI, the WI Seismic Research Center out of Trinidad, who is our monitoring institution for Kikem Jenny, is that we see that since April, Kikem Jenny would have started having some activity. And of course, we know that it's not anything new with her. In 2001, 2015, 2017, 18, you do get some activity around the area certain times. But for the past 3 months, she has been, I guess April and May was a bubbling time. But June, 1 week from the 5th to the 12th of June, we recorded, according to you, 1384 volcanic earthquakes in the area.
1,384?
Yes.
Wow.
And with a magnitude, the largest magnitude of 1.8 magnitude. For the past, the other 2 months it ranged between 1.6 to 2.0. So that normally, and if I'm going to quote from the report that was sent to us, it can be due to several reasons. It doesn't necessarily mean an eruption, because one of the things that the research center, monitoring center, would have recognized is that there were times that it would have behaved like that, but there were no eruptions.
Right.
There were no eruptions. So what you realize, it is changing in its behavior, but it can be due to a buildup of magma in the area, a crystallization, set of scientific processes, possibilities as to what's going on there with Kikem Jenny and the reason for so much activity there.
Right.
One of the things that every time we speak to Kikem Jenny, we have to dispel that myth, is that we know once we speak to Kikem Jenny, people start thinking, oh Lord, it's going to erupt and it's going to be this huge eruption where there will be a big tsunami and everybody will be washed away. And that, according to our experts at UWI, that is not necessarily the case. Because the volcano is so deep down in the water.
Right.
And it's dome. It's not that big. Because remember, every time there is an eruption, the cone is gone.
Right.
So it has to take time again to build it up. So if it was close to, maybe, as they always say, close to the surface, but there is never in disaster management. You never ever say never in disaster management. Possibility always exists because that's nature. Very little control we have over what happens there.
Right.
So you should always be prepared. And of course, it goes back to the Tsunami Ready project that was that pilot leg of the project that was done in St. Patrick in 2018. And it was because of this. And that's the reason why St. Patrick was chosen then as the pilot area, because of its proximity to, we know, a trigger for tsunamis in the area. Look at where Kikem Jenny is. St. Patrick is right there. Right. If there is a tsunami, waves more than likely will reach St. Patrick, we're talking a tsunami generated by Kikem Jenny. If that's the case, St. Patrick would definitely be a vulnerable, or one of our most, St. Patrick and Carriacou, vulnerable parishes. So, the protocol speaks to, if it comes, what you do. And I know last evening as we spoke to it on the news, and people saying, what's the protocol? We don't know it. What's the protocol? There are alerting systems in the parish of St. Patrick. So we have St. Patrick now recognized. Carriacou and Petit Martinique is also recognized. we had planned. The plan was to have St. George, the parish, the capital, recognized this year. But we know COVID has pushed everything in a different direction. But it would be work in progress. If that were to happen, what should you do? More than likely, you would see something. It's not like the movies where this huge wave would just come and just wash you out. It starts off small. The first set of waves that you will get would not be your biggest. You notice agitation in the sea, all of a sudden, because it must be initiated by something.
Right.
What initiates tsunamis? Huge earthquakes. We normally say 7.0 and over. Earthquake. So you remember that one we had in August of 2018?
Yes.
That 6.9? That one had me frightened because I knew this one was big. You feel disoriented when the earth moves.
Right.
Then you know this is cause for concern. You're on the beach, move. You in a flat area where you know you're within the hazard zone, not too far from the sea, move. Higher ground, always your best option. The highest area. According to the protocol, there are certain alarms that will go off. In St. Patrick, the church bells are expected to go off. The police sirens are expected to go off. Our fisher folks, remember they're always on the beach. Or vendors. We may have children in the area because in some of our hazard zones we have schools, we have daycare centers. We always encourage, and they are included. I can speak to St. Patrick and Carriacou because that's where we have the programs, where it's formal. That in these individual places, have a plan as to how you plan to move. Let's say you have toddlers, you have a daycare center, child development center. How do you plan to take all these little ones out in a short space of time when you know within the hazard zone? So these are the things that we encourage you to do. We always tell you, you see, you hear, run.
So
Feel, see, hear. So feel, see, hear, move.
have you guys ever done a mock where the bells are ringing, sirens are going off? Have you considered doing one so at least persons in the area can identify with what disaster sounds like?
Every year. Caribbean wave exercise, that tsunami exercise that we do, is the Caribbean tsunami exercise that happens every year. We should have had it in March. We were preparing to have it in March, but then of course it had to be postponed because of the coronavirus. We could not have encouraged the mass gathering because we usually do it among our schools and government institutions in the various parishes. We were actually preparing. It was going to be one of our biggest this year, and then we had to postpone. We were going to do it on the entire western corridor. So we were going to do St. Mark, St. John, and Grand Mall this year. Testing, because we work with scenarios that are given to us from the Tsunami Center under that tsunami program that we work with and with the IOC. So when you're given the scenario, depending on the one that you pick, Met Office would now give us the coordinates as to what parish we think will be most affected with the scenario presented.
Right.
So that is what we do. We do it every year. So you get, because that is the only way you can familiarize yourself with the sounds of the tsunami alert.
Right.
And what we have been trying to do as relates to the songs, for example, the fire, the police or emergency vehicles using their sirens, is that we try to use something different. We have not gotten to our ultimate place when it comes to the alert systems. It is our hope to get to the place of that of Japan, where you have that very, very loud electronic horns, sirens that are placed. So you have the speakers that are placed in different parts. Even in the BVI has a system like that. Whenever you trigger, the quake would trigger it, and it goes off, and once you hear it, you move.
Okay, and that would be good because I'm thinking about places, as you said, like Grand Mall and so on, Mount Morris, that area, Fountainoy, Cherry Hill, on that western coast where there is no access to sirens or a bell or anything like that. If there were to be, let's use the scenario of that road in Molyneux. Let's say there was an underwater slip, and that triggered a tsunami. what would happen in that scenario.
It was also one of the scenarios that we would have incorporated in this year's scenario, taking into consideration what is happening at Molineux, what has happened. Because remember, with that slip that we are expecting to go down, and it is something that we have also discussed at NADMA. Remember, another trigger to tsunamis is that of underwater slippages. So erosion or a landslide underwater can create a tsunami.
Right.
How many dust will be coming down from the top of that hill with the houses that will be that is moving, of course, with the land? What's the likely effect? Look, we have our 2 terminals, fuel terminals,
Right.
on the flattened Grant Mall.
Right.
And that was a need. That was a reason why we were planning to extend the exercise this year right down to Grand Mall, noting the importance of these 2, our fuel terminals, and also the stadium. Let's say it's intercall day and something were to happen. What do we do with our thousands of children and adults and at the stadium?
Now, the big question here would be, with us only having 1 case confirmed on the island now, our borders have not yet been opened. How possible is it for us to advocate to have that kind of activity, seeing the importance of something like that? Because we're looking at that Grand Mall area, we are not 100% sure what's happening underneath, what's happening with the plates, what movement, whether sudden or over time, is going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen if there is a period of rainfall, heavy rainfall, if that will trigger more slippage. Is there, or are you guys talking or putting plans in place to, whether it's by sections or on a whole, getting the people in that area ready for any eventuality?
As it relates to what's going on as it relates to the technical part of what's happening at Molineux, with NADMA having the construct that we do, we have to wait on the Ministry of Works to conduct that geotechnical study of that area before anything. As it relates to the plan, though, how you respond if that were to happen, we do have a national tsunami plan.
Okay.
So yes, it will be as it relates to people being, because that is also a part of the exercise. You must inform the people in the area that the exercise is happening.
Right.
Because Carriacou Wave, while it is about the actual execution, exercising on the day, the bigger part of Carriacou Wave exercise is more about information.
Right.
It's about awareness, ensuring that people know that there is a protocol, what you should do if this were to happen, where you should go, and of course you need to identify those places so that when it does happen, you're always ready. Because remember, tsunamis and earthquakes being some of the hazards that you cannot predict. And earthquakes you cannot predict. Tsunamis come quickly after earthquakes, depending on the magnitude of them.
Right.
It tells you that we cannot treat it like a hurricane, where we have hours to get into shelters and close schools and close
Correct.
businesses and make everybody go home. And
Correct.
that's the reason why we preach always. We know that it may be we sung like a recorder now, going over and over, but that's fine. Always be prepared, especially for the hazards that we cannot predict.
Okay, and I'm hoping that tomorrow I'm supposed to have the Minister for Work, so hopefully he can give us some insight on when the that studies, a geological study, is going to be done, so that we can move forward. Because I'm concerned, of course, because that's my area. You know, that's my area, and it's the area that my children are exposed to, and I know that there are a lot of children in that community. So the information is definitely something that's needed, and also a plan in place. I remember a few years ago, there was a fire at the Grand Mall gas station, that gas terminal. And I saw people running helter-skelter in Grand Mall because they weren't sure what to do. Lord, there's a fire at the gas station. The whole place is going to burn. The place is going to blow up. Is there a plan in place for something like that? In the event that the gas station catches fire. There are so many houses in close proximity. What do they do?
Because of the level of risk involved in just the business, I can tell you that you see our fuel companies, and we can also speak to Grenlec, that of SGU. If we're going to use companies that we can model as it relates to having disaster plans ready and always testing, we can use them as our model agencies. Because of the nature of their business, they know without a doubt that that must be in place. And we have been a part of exercises with them. I remember we had a tabletop one with both companies, Rubis and Sol. It was a Friday, one of the mornings earlier on this year, I believe. Yeah, earlier on this year or late last year, where the two companies came together. And we, it was a scenario of that of an oil spill, together with if you have the spill one, any threat to the terminal, getting everybody off. That they even have their, I know they have their muster point identified. They practice all the time, and before, and even on times when we have Carriacou wave, when it may not be in St. George's, they exercise also. Right. And one of the things, and I must add this, at NADMA, we want to commend the general public. We're seeing a shift, and that it goes back to the statement I made to you a while ago when you spoke of people not believing what NADMA say. That is not the case. That is not the case. Whenever we put our name to something, then people start listening. Then they start thinking, okay, so NADMA say, then it means something's happening. Right. Something more is happening. Right. Our people have become very safety conscious lately. Right. And I think it has to do with the emergence of a lot more of our hazards showing up themselves than before. Right. You see these earthquakes and so that we have been having, the earth is just shaking, and then we're hearing, and of course, access to information, the news, social media. We're seeing a tsunami in another part of the world and its effects. We're hearing of the big flooding in Trinidad, the water is gushing, and it has heightened our awareness and that importance of safety among our people. So we're asking, we're getting a lot more requests now for presentations. Help us develop a plan. We also have a template where we have a brochure form that we can distribute to people. So you're not sure how to create your emergency plan? We have them at the office. Call the office. We will share the information with you. And don't think of it too hard. An emergency plan is not a complicated document. It's simple. The same things we tell to our children when there's a fire. What should you do? You go low. You know the house. Stay low. Try to get to the door, but before you open doors, you touch them, ensure that they're not hot. Ensure that there's not fire behind them. Right. You open and you get out as quickly as possible, and you never go back in. Right. Same thing for hurricanes. What should you do? What is my responsibility in the plan? Is it that I check the emergency storage kit to ensure that it has all that we need? Or is it I help daddy batten down the windows, put up the shutters or close them, right. Ensure that the loose items that you may have outside, that they are tied so they will not become missiles, that we trim the trees, that we open up the drain, that we clean the gutters. That is all that the plan speaks to. It is just as a mother, you get up in the morning and you say, okay, I know I have to prepare lunch, I have to get the children, I have to get everybody out for work and school, and then I have to, I have this, that, the other to do in the day, so I sit down and I make my list. Now, you, and you're going. That is all the plan entails. And that is what we ask of people to do. Have a discussion. That's all it is.
Right. Now, schools are closed right now, but of course we're looking to September for the reopening of schools. Now, what would you encourage, or do you know of schools, or is it mandatory that schools have an emergency plan in place for any natural disaster that may come our way, whether it's an earthquake or a hurricane or so on, because individuals or families may have plans for their children and saying, okay, I might tell my child, well, if you hear or if there is an earthquake, I want you to try and get to higher ground as quickly as possible. But that might not be the plan that the school has. They may have a different plan. So do you know of plans that the schools put in place to deal with their students and the safety of their students in the event of a natural disaster?
Every school is mandated to have a plan, and I know the ministry together with NADMA was doing a program on school safety, ensuring that, and as I said, and I recognize too that our principals are there on board, because, Duncan, nobody wants to be the one to tell a parent that I cannot find your child that you would have put in their care. I know I don't want that message, nor do you. So, two, how can you prevent this from happening? You always ensure that you have a plan. And it is the reason why whenever we conduct exercises that we target our schools. Remember, that is where we have our mass population. And children are always vulnerable. They are vulnerable. But what we also recognize too is that once a plan is tested regularly enough, that they would remember the things that they need to do. And not only them, they would bring the message home to their parents, and they initiate the conversation, because as parents, nothing propels us more than to ensure that our children are safe.
That is absolutely true. So I know that we are preparing for the hurricane season. I know that we are dealing with corona. I know that we are dealing with Kikim Jenny. We're dealing with a lot, really. I mean, you guys are dealing with a lot, kind of cushioning the effects for the public. But in the background, you guys are working really hard. And of course, we must say thank you for all of the hard work that you guys have been doing and putting in. Now, I know that NADMA works with volunteers from the general public, if I'm correct, to help to get the message across in some cases, to assist in areas where needed in case of a natural disaster. If someone wanted to be a volunteer or wanted to assist, what would you advise that they do?
We did send out a call for volunteers earlier on this year, just around the corona period, and the response has been super. And we must say thank you to the general public. Must say thank you. Very, very encouraging. People, all that we ask, if you do, you can call the office or you can send us an email at nadma@spicel.com or nadmapr@gmail.com. Your name, address, telephone number, your interest, area of interest, communication, public education, whatever area you have interest in, shelter management, works, agriculture, whatever it is, send us that information, your email address. So name, address, so where you live, name, address, email address, telephone number, area of interest. And what we are planning to do is engage our volunteers, because we have to prepare you. Disaster management is not a field where you can just pick people up and just throw them in the sea and expect them to swim, sink or float. We can't afford to have that, because we're dealing with people. So we have to prepare you. What we will do, one of the positives of COVID is that of virtual engagements. So we are looking at engaging the people who would have shown interest in wanting to be volunteers soon through the virtual platform. So we do a Zoom engagement first, and then after that we would continue to do trainings via that platform. And before I wrap up, I must say that we have used the same platform and engaged our district committees in training for 5-week period, facilitated by Ms. Samantha Dixon, former acting coordinator at NADMA, now president of the Red Cross Society here in Grenada. So every afternoon you had an hour, not every afternoon, 2 afternoons per week for 5 weeks, would have engaged our district coordinators. COVID, hurricane season, getting us ready. And the same will be applied to our volunteers. So please, a number of people would have reached out to me. We have collated a database and continue to add names as you show interest. I know people have been sending information on Facebook, sending me via WhatsApp. You can call, do so, send an email. The information will be shared with the team, and you will be added to the database, and we will be making contact with you. A lot of people have been wondering, but I haven't heard from NADMA yet. We're coming. There's a lot happening. There is a whole lot happening, and the hazards are not giving us any time to breathe. But we are coping. We don't have a choice. We have to respond, because it is what we do.
All right. Well, I'm telling you now, I want to be a volunteer. So I will be calling the office.
Okay.
And I'll be sending an email. Because we have to do what we can to help our society in any way that we can.
Yes.
Whether, I know a lot of people look at it and say, well, why volunteering when you have people getting paid to do this work?
Our work cannot cannot happen without volunteers.
Yeah.
13 people employed at the disaster management office cannot mount a successful response to any hazard
Yeah.
by ourselves. It's impossible. It's impossible. The population of 110 thereabout, it's impossible. So we always need the assistance of people. We know we may have people that are retirees among us and looking for things to do. Please, you can be the head of a group. You will have that team building skills that you came out of the workplace with. You were a former manager, former teacher,
Right.
principal. You can bring new things to the table. And remember, there is nothing cast in stone. What we would do is guide according to the parameters that we work with. But as it relates to outright no. It's a dynamic field. It's
Right.
very, very dynamic. And of course, when there are many things happening, you have to use the ideas and the people around you to ensure that you can deliver and ensuring that you can live up to your mandate.
All right. Now, I want to open the lines quickly in case there's anyone with a question or so on. Remember, the number to call is 440-7377 if you are calling locally, if you're in the diaspora. And you want to give us a call, it's 347-329-3101. And we're also able to take WhatsApp calls and WhatsApp messages at 440-7377 as well. And I know that Ms. Crosby has to run because she's a very busy woman. But before you go, there are two very important points that I want us to touch on quickly, and it has to do with the different levels of alert for Kekem Jenny. I know there's green, there's yellow, there's orange.
The international alerting colors are red, green, yellow, and orange.
And orange.
So right now we're at yellow,
Right,
which
and-
tells you that it's stable, yes, but that things can change.
Mm-hmm.
But once we move to orange, it tells you that there is need for concern.
There's need for concern.
Red is always your worst case scenario.
Right. Right. So now that we are at yellow, it means
Yellow is normal. What we call it. So there can be increased activity because we did not move the alert.
Mhm.
We did not move the alert. It remained at yellow with the
Okay.
exclusion zone of 1.5 kilometers from the summit, where we encourage our marine operators not to traverse. Stay away from the area at all costs. Because, of course, with the increased activity, you know that there are increased, of course, emissions of gas
right.
from the volcano in the water. And you know, wherever it is, there will be no buoyance there. So our ships will go down. So you have to be cautious. And that's the reason why the information that is shared from UE, because some people don't, but if it would not have a big tsunami, then why do you say anything? We have to. Because remember, it's not just the people on land we have to speak to. We speak also to our marine operators, our fisher folks, the people who provide a service, the water transport people.
Right.
We have to ensure that you know what's happening, because somebody might just be, you don't know. We have yachties in the area. It's important that you know of the exclusion zone. So what we encourage when we send out that bulletin on Sunday, it was to let people know that there is increased activity around the in the volcano area. Be reminded of this, maintain the exclusion zone, which is the normal exclusion zone. So we stayed at yellow. But what it tells you is that it doesn't mean that it's dead. It's not dormant, because you know it's a very active volcano.
Right.
But it tells you that. So it's like yellow is like your transition phase. Active, but not over. But if we move you, if you were to move the alert to another color, and normally we don't go down because remember it is active. Yellow is what we consider normal.
Right.
Anytime you move, it's because there's more than normal. There is more than normal. And as everything, we know red means one thing. So be it in Met, be it with volcanoes, anytime you see red,
You know it's danger.
it's wrong. It is
Red is
danger.
danger. All right. Now, also, I want you to, for the purpose of our listening and viewing audiences, can you give us an outline of what a disaster preparedness plan should look like, or what it should incorporate?
You start off by identifying all the hazards. Disaster emergency plan, you said?
Yes.
So we start off by identifying all the hazards that have the potential of affecting us. We know what they are. Fire, accidents. We have the hurricane season. We now have climate change that is of concern. Volcanoes, earthquakes, all the hazards, flooding that can affect us. We have biological, so we can have biological. We have the health ones, as we have corona now. So you sit and you identify them. And for each hazard, you would discuss now how, if this were to affect us, how can we deal with it, be safe, and still have enough to be able to sustain the family. So that's where you start. That's where you start. And as I said, it is similar to that of planning your day. When we talk fire, then you always preach, and as children, since we're children, our parents, don't touch the matches. Or as parents, you put it far away from the little ones. They will be curious. When you're crossing the road and it comes to accidents, you don't just run across the road. You drop from a bus if you're using the public transport system and just run across the road. That is not good, right? You know you have to stop. Or if you think you don't think you're comfortable enough to do it, ask an adult to help you cross. That's accidents. Earthquakes, we tell you drop, cover, hold. So you're in school, you go under your table. The doorway. We don't advise for beds, because if it were to fall on you, then the mattress can be a hazard by itself. So a sturdy table, we normally say. A sturdy one, a doorway. We sometimes say don't run outside, because you may run out and you may go directly under an electrical line. And shaking, it fall, you become electrocuted. So there you have another hazard. So you always have to be mindful of all that's around you. When you plan safety. Safety is paramount. It's at the top of the list. It's the first thing and the last thing when you're planning for disaster management. As it relates to hurricanes, we know what that one means. Prepare the home. You have to do the home. You may have to do your work. So lives, livelihood, property. What we always speak to, safety, that culture of safety. When we speak to, what's the other one? Tsunamis, we tell you always. So if you're working in St. George's and you know you're not too far away from the sea and you're in the hazard zone, the first thing you should identify is what is the highest point that I will be running to if there is a threat of a tsunami and I am at work. Also do the same thing for home. You can say, all right, so I'm on top of the hill, so I'm safe. But my family, my mother may be living down in the hazard zone. What is the message I should share with her? So she should know then, okay. And if you know your mother has a challenge, so she has issues with her legs, what does that mean?
Yeah.
You have to have a contingency plan in place. So you may not be home, you may be at work, but somebody needs to fill that backup plan to ensure that your mom can be moved from her home. Because remember, you cannot solely depend on our police officers to do so remember, almost all our police stations are in hazard zones, when they also have to get themselves out of danger in the process. So it is just being mindful, being conscious of your surrounding, knowing where we're at, doing your assessment. It is just like you. If you know that you have issues with your blood pressure, then you know you have to stay away from the salt. We don't expect you to eat the salt when you know that you have pre-existing conditions. So it does not only work for the external things. The internal part is also important, because you can plan, you can have a plan, good plan, solid plan. But if you're not preparing yourself, then you won't be able to move when the time comes. So take care of you. What you put in, the body would give out. So disaster management, as you recognize, and I think Corona would have brought that into focus, that while it is a health pandemic, it's a pandemic, it's a problem in the health sector. It does not only affect health, the economy is troubled because of it. Agriculture is in trouble because of it. Tourism sector is in trouble because of it. It's each and every sector is connected one way or the other. And in disaster management, we know they are all the same, because rain never falls on one man's rooftop. It falls on each and every one of us. And when problems start, it's all of us in it.
Absolutely. Well, do you have any closing remarks, anything you'd like to share with the general public before you leave?
All I want to do is just say thank you to all, of course, the general public. I'm going to start at home. The NADMA team is at the office, working through that COVID period. Our district our district committees have been working because they've been assisting with that of the contact tracing was working there. We also have our volunteers, the people who have expressed interest in assisting us in ensuring that if we have to respond, that we're ready. Very, very important. We cannot do it without a strong volunteer system. The Ministry of Health during the COVID period, well, this continues because right now we still have a team at the conference room up in NADMA with the team that came in yesterday, ensuring that everybody's settled in and the needs they have. Tanya and Arthur and the others always working to ensure all stakeholders, all core team. Remember, every ministry is a part of NADMA. Every essential service provider, companies are part of NADMA. So when we say NADMA, we're not talking about the office on the hill. We're talking all of us. Police, fire, Coast Guard, Grand Neck, Flow, everybody. NAWASA is incorporated in that system because when we have to respond, each and every one of us, each and every department, and that's the reason why the agencies are coordinating unit, each and every department must play their part to ensure that we can achieve our mandate. And we invite everyone to go onto the Facebook page, like the Facebook page, NADMA Grenada. There this hurricane season, ensure that we populate the site. All releases, daily we do the hurricane tips. So you can go you can use it, share it on your page. Just reminders, the things that we should do. We'll be working along with GIS to ensure that we do the programs, reminding you. They are reminders of the things that we should be doing during this time, keeping in mind COVID and everything else that can happen. These programs here on HARDTALK, well, we know that all I do is I just pop up. We have our monthly program schedule. Yes. And, of course, whenever things happen, then you know that I will pop in or call you or share something.
Of course.
And what we encourage also is that you can send us your contact because I'm trying to ensure that our WhatsApp groups, that we have enough, that we can reach somebody in every parish because it means that once I send it to you, you would send it to somebody else in your contact list.
Yes.
And please, whenever I do share the releases, send it out to your contact. That is how we can ensure that our reach is wider and that our people, information is what makes a difference in disaster management. Being able to share information because that is how people can respond in time and, of course, get the best outcome. The difference in life and death in disaster management is that of time. Response.
Yes.
But you can only respond if you get information. So we continue to work on this. We continue to work on it. But we are grateful for the support that we get from the general public and, of course, Corporate Grenada. We do have our primary school radio quiz on now on 3 of our stations, that of WeiFM, Top FM and Boss FM, where we send a question daily. We could not have done our primary school quiz, annual NADMA primary school quiz this year because, of course, school was out.
Right.
Is out, still out. So we're a question a day on the station. So we invite our children to listen in the morning on those stations and answer the questions. We do have a prize for you. Okay. And we will be getting them to you. And, of course, we want to say thank you to the Grenada Bottling Company for ensuring that we have something, a token of appreciation to give to our little ones as when they do answer as an incentive. And we want you to listen to the questions as their ideas as parents that we can get, because we now have a bigger platform to share and engage the public, and not just our children being our marketers this time around. We get to send the message straight home.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Oslin, for being here with us and for sharing with the general public the information that is necessary for their safety as we approach the different seasons and as we continue to engage each other on COVID-19 and understanding that we are not going to be over it just yet, but we have to learn to live with the effects of it. All right. Thank you so much, guys. We're going to take a short break and then we will be back with some final comments. Stay tuned.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new national party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.
Whenever they leave their home, attempt to enter or is in line to enter a place of business, government offices, and while in a motor vehicle with any other person. Be COVID-19 smart. Obey the law. Cover up. Wear your mask.
Good day, listeners. Welcome to our program brought to you by the Grenada Solid Waste Management Authority. In today's program, we will be hearing from founder of G-Cubes, Mr. Harald Reichenbach. G-Cubes is a non-profit organization from Switzerland which was started 6 years ago in an effort to bring about awareness on the impacts of pollution in the marine environment through art. Garbage cubes, or G-Cubes, comprises of bits of garbage collected along beaches or in the ocean, which are then compacted into cubes with the coordinates and filled with resin to create an attractive art feature. Founder of G-Cubes, Mr. Reichenbach, who is currently here in Grenada, saw the need for the small island states to be aware of the global marine pollution problem, as oftentimes those islands are the ones most affected by the tons of waste making its way into the marine environment each year. While on the Grenada leg of his journey, it was the hope of Mr. Reichenbach to work along with the schools, but due to the pandemic COVID-19, such plans are on hold until the safe reopening of schools island-wide. Mr. Reichenbach now shares with us a bit more of this initiative and how he works along with the various schools around the world.
I go around the world and I collect trash and I produce the G-Cubes, a garbage cube. G is for garbage. I started in 2017 because I had to wait to departure with the ship in Europe. I started to make events at the schools. And there I realized that much more important than my art project, I want to make one cube of 1,000 of these after a circumnavigation as a monument to bring it back to the big cities where the garbage, especially the plastic, is produced, exported on the small islands, and nobody helps them to get rid of it. That was the basic principle. And I realized that the schools, it's really the main pillar meantime of my project, because I think it's very important. When I was afterwards in the South Pacific, there is not a lot of information about what's happening with the plastic, where it's coming from, what you should do with it or not. So the main pillar is to work with the schools, and in practice I work with a class, maximum 50 people. We go to collect the garbage at the beach, we bring the garbage to the school, we prepare it for compression. I have the compressors and the molds all with me. I bring that to the school, and then we produce together with the kids the cubes. That means the kids in groups of maximum 5 per machine make one cube, together. Then they compress it, and then they pour it with me, and at the end we take it out of the mold, and you have these insignias. On there is always the coordinates where the garbage comes from, the title G-Cubes, of course. Then it's a short name for the school or for the youth group I worked with. And at the end, the kids can put in their initials, they can sign their cube, like Picasso signs a painting, and they are really proud and like to do that. And then I leave 20%, that means of each mold we produce in a school, I leave 2 cubes in the school, and 8 cubes I take back home to Switzerland, and they will be part of the end cube of 1,000 cube. This monument done by the children around the world will be an itinerating touring show. I hope that I can show that in the big cities all around the world afterwards. That it's a long-term thing, just as a as a monument for people to say that's a statement of the youth.
All right, guys, and we are back, and that was Miss Rosalind Crosby from NADMA sharing with us the plans that NADMA has in place for the hurricane season, plans that are in place in the event of any natural disaster, and what they are and continue to do and work along with the Ministry of Health in dealing with COVID-19. Guys, this is why we do what we do. It's important for you to know that plans must be put in place for your life. Nobody must plan on your behalf. Your plans, you must sit and make plans for your life, how you want your life to be, for your safety of you and that of your family, for the safety of the people that surround you, not just family members, but maybe neighbors, less fortunate people in your community, and sometimes I wonder, because we spend so much time on social media, so much time involving ourselves in the day-to-day politics and the melee and the jump up and the drama. And sometimes I wonder, what plans are we putting in place for our lives? What plans are we putting in place for the lives of our family and for the lives of our children? One of the most important topics that I think I need to touch on next week, and plans are already in place for engaging individuals on that, is that of a retirement plan. A lot of Grenadians, and it's very, very, very disappointing that a lot of people do not have a retirement plan in place. A lot of people are sitting there saying, oh, well, we paid an IS so we can get pension at the end of the day. A lot of people are sitting there waiting and hoping that the government would put a pension plan in place so that when they retire, they get a piece of money. But then what next? What after that? What are the plans that you have in place for your survival after you have retired? Because what we don't understand for a lot of us is that when retirement stops, or when retirement comes, when our source of employment is cut off, it means that our source of income has also cut off, or our main source of income, I should say, has also been cut off. So we must now think of ways in which we can sustain ourselves when that time comes. That's a very important topic that I think we don't pay much attention to. What are your plans for your life? You know, we spend a lot of time talking about politics, about who shouldn't and who don't deserve to be there, and who wicked and who not wicked, and all of that. We spend so much years focusing on which government we like and which government we don't like and which government we vote in for. And at the end of the day, we do not spend sufficient time and effort and energy focusing on our lives and what our lives are going to become and what we expect for ourselves and where we see ourselves going down the road. You know, this morning I listened to a radio program with a representative from the NDC that is talking about the poor and the vulnerable in Grenada and how they are susceptible to being to becoming involved in drug practices and so on. And I was disappointed to hear that coming from that individual, because time and time again, and his only suggestion was that, government needs to look at it. No, government doesn't always need to look at everything. You see, that is why you guys are there. You're not only there to come on a Tuesday morning on a radio program or to sit on social media and bash the government. You are also there to ensure that the population that you want to govern or that you are vying to govern also knows how to sustain themselves. So you're not going to wait until you are in office to say, okay, well, this is what you guys should do. No, you do it while you are outside of office as well. And you see, that's the biggest problem we have in Grenada. We feel that we must be sitting at a seat of a higher council before we can give people advice. And that is not how it should be, right? So maybe next Tuesday, whoever is coming should instead of saying, oh, well, there are people that are poor and vulnerable in different parishes in the country and that they are susceptible to drug usage and drug trafficking and all of that, maybe what you can do is provide more information on how they can lift themselves out of poverty, you know, introduce them to practices and ways that can improve their lives. Because I'm never going to be tired of saying this. It is not the job of the government to take you by the hand and pull you out of poverty. It is their duty to provide an environment where you can thrive, an environment where you can create opportunities to pull yourself out of poverty. And that is what we must understand. So you must have a plan in place for your life, a plan for your safety in case of a fire, a plan for your safety in the event of a hurricane, a plan for your safety in the event of an earthquake, a plan for your safety, but also a plan for your retirement. How do you plan to survive when you can no longer work, when you have gotten to that age where you are expected to retire? What plans do you have for your life? I want us to leave us with that thought this morning. We make a lot of noise about pensions and gratuities and all of that. That is all well and good. It would be great if everybody could get a large pension and a large gratuity and all of that. But at the end of the day, that's only money. And that can only last for a period. What plan do you have in place for your future and the future of your children? So we can't just sit there and say to ourselves, struggling, seeing trouble, I had to go and get a little help, I had to see where I get a little walk. And we cannot continue with that mindset. And people must not encourage that kind of mindset. Especially, and I make no apologies in saying that, especially political activists and political parties are very good at making you feel that the reason you are in poverty is because the government is not providing you with the necessary tools to get out. That's not true. It's not going to just fall in your lap. You have to put in the work. Like we said yesterday, nothing in life that is good comes easy. It always takes a lot of hard work. You have to be ready to put that work in. What plans are you making for your future? What plans are you making for retirement? Are you going to utilize that piece of land that's been sitting, wasting in the back of your house to go into farming? Now is the time to start thinking about it. Don't wait until you get to retirement age and the little pension money start dwindling down and you realize that it cannot sustain you anymore. So you're looking for ways now to pick up the pieces. Don't wait for that time. Start thinking about it now, in your youthful years, while you still have a lot of life ahead of you. Put those plans in place. Guys, it's always a pleasure being here with you. Tomorrow, we are expected to have the Minister for Works, Transportation and Works. So I hope that you guys will tune in, get your questions ready. And I'm making it very clear from today, no, we are not talking about Grenlec. If you ask me a question about Grenlec, I will not ask it. So please. There are a lot of things we can talk about, and the minister has already made it very clear that when the time comes, there will be conversation on it. Tomorrow is not that time, so don't ask. I'm telling you in advance, all right? We do have a lot of activity this week on the program as it relates to who's coming, what we have planned for you. So stay tuned. Remember to like and share the program, follow the page so we can see your questions when you post them. Guys, in everything you say and whatever you do, be safe, be secure. I always want to be talking with you and never about you. Please do enjoy the remainder of your day.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with.
You're listening to Hard Talk Grenada via www.
Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.